Hi, I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Suze, and welcome to EduBofs,
where you will find tips for teachers and help for your students.
We would really appreciate it if you would click that little red subscribe button down below and share with all of your friends. You can find us on all the socials, and the links for all of those are in the description box below.
And if you really want to know when the next video is arriving, just click that little bell so that you get a notification.
As you can see, Cheryl is back! Yay! So, what are we doing today, Cheryl?
We're going back to our academic notebooks because setting them up and maintaining them will need support from the teachers if the students are going to get it right.
Okay, so what can we do to help with the setup?
Well, first of all, at the beginning of every book, there's usually a contents page.
But true.
I have to be honest, I am not that well organized in advance to plan a contents page.
No, not
So
mine.
what I do is I encourage my students to use tiny post-it notes or page tabs to mark the start of each new topic or section.
That makes sense. That makes it nice and easy to be able to go and find it, instead of a contents page where you've got to go and look at the numbers and look for the page numbers. I've got numbered pages. Yeah, tabs all the way.
Tabs
Every
tabs
time.
works brilliantly. The next thing is that students need to know exactly what to expect.
Which is something that needs to happen for everything in the classroom, really. So why shouldn't we do that with the academic notebooks?
So to that end,
Yep.
Susan and I have designed rubrics.
Yep.
One for the middle schoolers and one for the senior schoolers.
And you can find those for free as a downloadable PDF on Teachers Pay Teachers. Link is down below.
Yeah, so I get my students to stick that in right at the front of the academic notebook.
Right, so do we assign grades for our academic notebooks, or how do you go about marking those?
So I actually don't use grades on the rubrics. I use little headings like hero and superhero.
The other thing is, I know at my school we don't actually give them grades for their notebooks, which I think we probably need a bit more emphasis on them because their notebooks are not that great. So we need a way to be able to get around that with them putting in the effort but not actually having to assign any grades to it.
Okay, the next thing that we need is a template.
Yep.
If they're going to be using Cornell notes.
And we have one of those too! Imagine that. We have one of those too. You can also find that on Teachers Pay Teachers. Link is down below. A free template for using Cornell notes with that little retrieval method twist that Cheryl likes to do with her class. Very useful. That's free on us.
And lastly, my middle schoolers in particular have assignments flying everywhere. So I like to help them by having a little assignment pocket at the back of the notebook. It's just an A5-ish sized piece of card which they can staple into the back and pop their assignments in.
Ta-da! Look at that. Beautiful.
So Suze, once we've taught our students to set up their academic notebooks, we need to support them in the maintenance of their academic
Absolutely,
notebooks.
because there's no way that they're going to maintain it completely on their own.
No, they won't, especially not as middle schoolers.
Definitely not.
All right, so how do you start up your lessons?
So I actually start my lessons very differently to most high school teachers. Most of the high school teachers I work with let their class in and then greet them in the classroom before starting the lesson. But I've found that if I actually greet my students outside the classroom, it sets the tone for the entire lesson before they even walk in. So I will actually have my class line up outside, and I will not greet them until they are quiet, because I also expect them to be respectful. Once I have greeted them, I let them inside. Now, when they go inside, my students already know exactly what to do because I've trained them to do a certain little classroom routine. So on the board, I already have the date, the title, and the learning goal for the lesson already on the board. So my students come in, once they've greeted me, they sit down, they open their notebooks ready to go, and they immediately start writing down the date, title, and learning goal, ready to learn. Once they are ready to learn, their pencil is down on the table and they're sitting waiting quietly. I normally give them 2 or 3 minutes. I don't normally give them more than that because the learning goal is usually pretty short. But once they've done that, they're ready to learn. And I find often I don't have to quiet them down to then start the lesson. They just know what to do and they're ready to go.
I do a similar thing with my middle schoolers. I also find that it just gives me those couple of minutes that I need to mark the role.
Yep.
The only difference with my seniors is because I'm training them for the adult world, I greet them outside, but I let them just enter. I don't line them up or anything like that.
Yep.
But I still expect them to come in, sit down, and get ready to learn by setting up their academic notebook.
Yep. So what's next?
Well, the next thing I found, particularly with my middle schoolers, is that handouts can take a long time to paste in.
Do you have scissors? Has anybody got scissors? Has anyone got glue? I don't have glue. Miss, I can't do the work yet because I'm waiting for the scissors and he's next after that person.
So what do you do about it, Suze?
Well, there are a couple of things you can do. Either you can pre-cut them ready to go with a guillotine or whatever before you go if you've got that little bit of time. Or you can carry around what we like to call a stationary boomerang box. So what this stationary boomerang box is it's a little box that you can just carry around because we don't actually here have our own classrooms. We're in different classrooms every lesson pretty much. So whatever we use has to be easy to carry around. So the stationary boomerang box has got things in it like glue, scissors, rulers, a couple of pens or pencils. And what happens is the students don't need to ask to borrow the stuff. If they don't have it, they can get up, they can take it and use it. But the point of it is that everything in that box is a boomerang. Once they've used it, they have to put it back.
Works well.
It does work well.
Really
It does work well. And when a kid doesn't have a pencil or a pen, they're not then disrupting the lesson, you know, when it's time to start working. Yes, I don't have a pen.
Or bugging their neighbour for stationery.
Yes, that's even worse. It definitely disrupts the learning. So that's a really good idea if you've got kids that you know, especially kids who are on IEPs and you know they're not super organised, just they know that they can go and collect those things without having to ask for it and it doesn't distract from the lesson.
So that gets all the handouts pasted in neatly and quickly.
All right, the next thing that we go on to for maintaining our notebooks is making sure that we as teachers are keeping a check on those notebooks.
Correct, because you can't expect what you don't inspect.
That's exactly right.
It also gives you an opportunity to give praise to students who are good at just keeping a notebook. However, teachers are busy. And we don't want to have to do excessive marking.
No, absolutely not. Don't
have time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Ain't nobody.
No.
So, how do we get around it?
Well, we could do spot checks. How would you do spot checks?
I think spot checks need to be done randomly so that students don't actually know when you're coming around to check.
Oh, I like that element of surprise. Very nice.
And I like to make sure that each of my students' notebooks gets randomly spot checked once or twice a term.
Yep.
Some students need more spot checks than others, so it's an opportunity to differentiate your teaching of organisation.
This is true, because no one's born with the knowledge to organise. I wasn't. I had to learn that, still learning.
What about the formal check, Sue?
A choose and check is when you tell students that you are actually going to check their notebooks. You give them 5 minutes to go and choose 2 pages for you to actually mark on the rubric, and then you as the teacher get to choose 1 page. So they don't know what page you're going to choose, that's totally up to you. But then at least they get a modicum of control over what you're marking for them.
Good.
And I wouldn't suggest taking the books in per se, all of them. I would suggest maybe using that lesson to go around and do it there in front of them and having that discussion with them, because knowing for myself, it not being my classroom, if I want to take it and check them, I have to carry 30 odd notebooks back to the staff room and I don't have anywhere to put them. My desk is already full of post-it notes and other fun things, and I don't really have space for 30 odd notebooks. It also gives you that chance to have that conversation with that student. And if you don't get round to every single student on that day, you can at least get round to the rest of the students the next day.
And of course, while you're checking their notebooks, they're working on individual work.
Absolutely.
And they are practicing the 4 Bs.
That's right, 4 Bs. Brain, book, buddy, boffin. If you haven't seen that video yet, I will link it up in the cards and you can click on that and go and have a look at that fun little classroom management strategy.
So, another thing that I like about the academic notebooks is it gives you the opportunity to easily differentiate
Absolutely.
worksheets for your students.
Yep. So, due to one of my neighbours deciding that today was the day we wanted to mow the lawn, we had to come inside. So we can look at the fishies while we finish up our video. So, differentiation of learning.
So what I do is I try to make that as easy as possible.
We all teach students who are on the NCCD roster, and they all need a little bit something different.
They do.
Yeah.
I use blue paper to print my worksheets for students with specific reading difficulties because I have found that they read better on the background of blue.
Yep. Our school we use yellow paper or cream paper, and that seems to help them as well.
It helps them as well. What I do for students who really struggle with note taking is I can give them a almost complete set of notes with maybe just a diagram that they might need to label.
Yep. And of course you can extend on that as well. If you've got students who need a bit of help but not all the help, you can give them the same worksheet but more as a closed activity with words or phrases missing that they need to fill in as they go.
Correct.
So they're not having to take all the notes, they're just having to listen out for those key words that they need to fill in, and they can kind of read along as well, which kind of helps.
Yeah, it helps them a lot.
Yep.
And of course for the students who are very capable of taking notes, we give them very little in the way of a worksheet, more of a template or even just to take notes in their notebook itself.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. You can't spoon feed everybody, right?
Correct.
Yep.
And I think that those more able students take pride in their ability to take notes.
Absolutely.
It's great for them.
Yep.
And lastly, Suze, I found that using an academic notebook is an excellent way to keep students on track when they've been away and have missed work.
Absolutely, because I mean, being in a school, inevitably the kids are going to either get sick, or if they're sporty, they're going to be doing a lot of sports carnivals and missing school. Some kids that I've had have been pulled out for a couple of weeks to go overseas because why not do it in the school term? Not recommended. But it happened. So then we need to have a way for these students to be able to catch up easily.
Yeah, and because our students in my school are allowed to use mobile phones in the senior years, I've called this little technique Snap and Go. I ask them to find a trusted buddy who takes notes really well. I give them permission to use their mobile phones, photograph the page, and then leave the set number of pages so that when they get home, they can either handwrite their notes from the photographs, or they can print them, paste them in, as long as they carefully read, highlight, make notes, and ask questions on that printed page.
So unlike Shell's school, my school is absolutely no mobile phones at all. If they have them at school, they're meant to be in their locker, and we're actually told to confiscate phones if we see them. So for us, using a mobile phone doesn't work. However, in grades 7 and 8, all of our students have an iPad because we're a one-to-one school, and they are able to do that with their iPads. Now, the grades 9 and up, it's a little bit more difficult because they've got MacBooks, and often taking a photo on a MacBook, it's backwards or whatever, so that can be a bit tricky. So this is when it is helpful if you as the teacher have your phone there, or your iPad in my case. I can then take a photo of one person's notes, and I can actually send that to all the students who are absent on that day.
That's a really good technique, and that's what I do with my juniors as well, because they are not allowed to have their mobile phones. So that's it. Implementing and maintaining academic notebooks.
Done and dusted. We hope that was really, really useful for you as a teacher. Of course, we have got a PDF with notes of everything that we've spoken about today in our TPT store. It is free. Just click on the link in the description box below. You will also find in our store, you will find rubrics for senior school, for the senior school notebook, and you'll find rubrics for a middle school notebook. They are slightly different because of the age difference and maturity difference. You will also be able to find there the Cornell Notes template that is in there. Please feel free to leave any comments down below. If there is a topic that you would like us to address, let us know and we will get back to you on that as soon as we can. Of course, click that little subscribe button, leave us a thumbs up, and go and visit us on all the socials. We would love to have a chat with you.
We'd also love to get your feedback on how you're going with your academic notebooks.
Absolutely. Any photos that you have of your students' academic notebooks, anything like that, post them up on Instagram and tag us at EduBofs, and we will happily have a look and leave you some feedback as well.
So, until next week.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.